Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session today on overcoming writer's block. We're going to talk about how to use some methods to keep your writing flow steady. I'm your host, Moxie Anderson. I'm excited to talk to you about this topic. Um, in this webinar, you're going to learn today what writer's block is. We have several different opinions from experts on whether it actually exists or not. We'll look at some professional authors' ideas on writer's block, and then we'll take a look at some ways that you can use AI and Scribbler's AI to defeat writer's block. It's very, very helpful in many different ways. So if we think about writer's block and inspiration in the past, I thought it was just interesting to mention that in ancient history, in ancient Greece, there was this idea of these goddesses, the muses, who inspired poets and historians and musicians and artists to create their works. So the thought was that you needed to invoke the muse or call out to the muse to have them help you create your work of art. And you'll see this a lot in ancient poetry. So I have this example from Homer at the beginning of the Odyssey, his famous long poem about Odysseus's desire to get back home and his inability to do so. He says, "Sing to me of the man, Muse, the man of twists and turns, driven time and off course. Once he had plundered the hallowed heights of Troy." So you can see here at the beginning that Homer is directly talking to the muse, asking for inspiration. And you'll see this with later poets too. Shakespeare does invoke the muses. Chaucer invokes them at times. So it's a common thing for people to have done in the past when they needed inspiration, when they had writer's block. We know today that this is not the case. We know that writer's block is definitely a real thing, and it's the feeling that writers have when they cannot create any new writing. And we've had studies on this too. So in the 1970s, there were two researchers, Michael Barrios and Jerome Singer, who did a comprehensive study of writers. And they talked to them and asked them about their underlying causes of writer's block. And they found that most of them expressed that they were experiencing anger, anxiety, apathy, and fear of being compared to someone else. And that was contributing to their inability to write. All of them reported being unhappy. And of course, if you suffer from writer's block, you know it is not a good feeling to not be able to produce some work. So if you do have writer's block, if you're watching this webinar and you suffer from this and you're struggling to get some writing down, you should know you're in good company. Some of the famous writers that we know and read have suffered from this in the past, or they've either talked about it or we have come up with theories that they did. So men like F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby, Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man, Herman Melville, who wrote the huge tome Moby Dick. He also didn't produce writing for a long time after he wrote that novel. Maya Angelou said that she sometimes suffered from writer's block. The science fiction writer Orson Scott Card, who wrote Ender's Game, said that he experienced it. And John Steinbeck, the famous American writer who wrote The Grapes of Wrath, all of these writers have said that they suffered from writer's block, or we know that they have at some point in their lives. So you're in misery loves company, right? You're in good company, but it's not a company you want to be in. So some of the pros, some of their takes on writer's block I thought were interesting. Stephen King said that he had it while he was writing The Stand. And what really helped him to get over it is to kind of push everything aside and think about the theme of the book. What is the book about? He also says it's better to get any writing on the page, even when you, in quotes, bad writing, right? Because he says you can edit it later. And as you'll see, as we talk about how AI can help, this is a huge place that AI can help you with your writing, just to get some things on the page that you can edit later. So AI can be a huge asset here. And for those of you Stephen King fans, you'll notice that the image here is from the movie The Shining, where Jack is not producing any writing. So when his wife goes to look at, Wendy goes to look at the typewriter, she sees he's just writing all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So Stephen King has included writer's block even in some of his writing, and it's shown up in his movies. So Ray Bradbury, a famous science fiction writer and author of The Martian Chronicles, says for him, one of the cures for writer's block is to stop what you're writing about and do something else. He feels that if you're really struggling, you've picked the wrong subject, and you may need to take a look at what you're trying to write and begin anew. So that's his advice. Umberto Eco, Italian writer and author of The Name of the Rose, he says, "You are coming over to my place. You're in an elevator, and I'm waiting for you while you're coming up. This is an interstice, a space. I work in empty spaces. While waiting for your elevator to come up from the first to the third floor, I have already written an article." And I think what Umberto Eco is trying to say here is that unlike the Greeks who would, invoke a muse, you have to be ready when the muse is ready, right? So he's saying he finds these little time and spaces to work when he's waiting for something. Maybe you're at the doctor's office, you're waiting for your appointment, or you're, on a train, and you have this little bit of time there. So maybe that's a good time to write if you're struggling with writer's block as well. There are, however, dissenting opinions. There are writers like Judy Blume, the famous young adult author who wrote Forever, and Martin Amis, who wrote The Zone of Interest, and British author Alexander McCall Smith, who wrote the #1 ladies detective agency. They don't believe in writer's block. They think it's not a real thing. So there's a quote from Judy Blume here. "I don't believe in writer's block. For me, there's no such thing as writer's block. Don't even say writer's block." And she has a huge body of work, so maybe she really doesn't suffer from this. But the researchers have found that it is something that a lot of people do suffer from. They struggle with. So there are some tips here that I've found for you, and I think that what I'm going to do is talk about some strategies first that may help you, and then you can at the second part of these tips, we'll talk about how AI can help you. So one strategy that works for a lot of professional writers is to set a routine. Many writers report that they succeed and meet their writing goals this way. And in The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron says that you should write in the morning. She says that she writes what she calls morning pages. And she says she doesn't always write these with a goal in mind. You can free write, you can write, just some free writing in your journal, or take notes. And in this strategy, all writing that you produce is worthwhile. It's not going to waste. And I think that's a good attitude. You may think that you're just producing something and it's not going to work out, but it could turn out to be something that you use later. Octavia Butler, who had written Kindred, says that writing for her is a matter of habits. So she tries to stick to habits about when she's going to write. And Ray Bradbury also said that he tried to produce at least 1,000 words a day from the age he was 12, if you can believe that or not. It's astonishing. So for these writers, routine and habits have really helped them. Another strategy a lot of writers report that help is to try to free write. This is where you set a timer for 10 to 15 minutes and you write whatever comes to mind. The one thing you don't want to do if you try this is please, please, please don't edit for spelling and grammar, that kind of thing. You want to keep your fingers on the typewriter, keep moving, and it can help you unleash your creativity. If you try to over edit as you're writing, it's going to actually squash your creativity because you're in editing mode then. So this may help you, but just remember, don't go back and over edit your work as you're still in those 10 to 15 minutes that you're doing your free writing. You just want to put down whatever comes to mind. Another way that you can combat writer's block is to break down your work into smaller, manageable chunks. You might want to focus on 1 or 2 sentences at a time or 1 paragraph at a time. You can also use the list function in Scribbler's toolbar to set long-term goals and then watch your progress. And this is something that I think is the project manager in Scribbler is really helpful. And I really love this feature because you can see your success as you're going along and you can see what the work that you have left that you need to complete. So this is also a really good strategy, is to break down your work into manageable chunks. And I think this is where something like Umberto Eco's advice about using these small spaces could help you as well, right? If you have an hour where you're waiting at the doctor's office, you can get a lot of writing done. Another good strategy is to change your environment. Sometimes if we're working in the same space, I'm at my desk right now, it may not be optimal to be here every single time I need to write. It could kind of crush your creativity. So another tip is to try a different writing spot. You might want to go to a local park or a library. Those are very quiet places, or a cafe, especially if you want to write about other people. Sometimes watching other people in a cafe can help. It can also stimulate your creativity just by shifting your place in space. It's supposed to be very good for your brain to do this. So that may help you as well if you're suffering from writer's block and you need to get out of your normal environment. Another strategy is to set goals for yourself. It's good to have these for your writing session. I do try to write between 500 and 1,000 words a day. So you could do a word count, you could do a page count, a paragraph count if you're really pressed for time. A lot of us have full-time jobs, so even getting a paragraph down can be a triumph for that day. One thing that Scribbler has that really can help you as well is the goal icon. It looks like the target here on the screen. It's at the bottom right of Scribbler. So you can put in your daily word count, or you can put a file count as well if you'd like to. So I like this because it keeps me on track and it shows me how much I've accomplished if I'm meeting my word count as I'm working on this. Another thing that you can try is, if you need some inspiration, is to try different prompts. There are many of these pre-made prompts online. You can take a prompt, for example, like write about the first moment you remember as a child. That's always interesting to me because everybody's is different. So it really does come up with good results to see what people remember first in their childhood. This is really good because it may be something you may not have thought of, and it can bring up some ideas for you to play around with in your own writing, particularly if you're working on a memoir, right? Some of these prompts are very good for working on memoirs. We do have some of these in our challenges section on Discord, and you're always free to share what you've written in the general section on the Scribbler community online on Discord. I'd love to see what you've come up with some of these prompts. The next thing, any good writer is going to read and read and read. So it's always good to pick up a book, a magazine, a newspaper for inspiration. There are many crime writers who say that they get a lot of their ideas just from reading the newspaper, because you see a lot of inspiration there. You might want to follow authors you like on social media. A lot of them will talk about their own struggles with writer's block, and they have good advice for you. It's good to see what the pros do, especially if they're open about it. It's really helpful. Poetry is also extremely helpful and useful for stimulating your creative mind, and it's also very good for building your syntax and the ways that you create sentences yourself. So try something like poets.org. It's a free website. You can sign up for a daily free poem to be sent to your email. So you can just begin your writing session by reading a poem. It'll get your brain going in the right direction and into that creative flow. Another inspiring website that I really like is literaryhub.com. It covers all genres, and they always have inspiring stories there too for people who are writing, maybe struggling with writing, or they've had some triumphs in writing. So I really recommend this site as well. And then also, if you're writing a memoir, it's a really good idea to follow a blog with themes that are similar to yours. Or if you're writing a self-help book, try to find some blogs, something that you can read that has some themes or ideas similar to yours. That may help you as well. Another thing that's important is to take a break. If you are sitting in front of your computer and you're getting frustrated, sometimes it's a good idea to take a walk, to go have a workout, to work on some household chores. This will allow your writerly brain to refresh and develop some new ideas. One thing that I like to do, I know it sounds very odd, I like to do origami because it uses a completely different part of my brain than the writing part of my brain. So I feel like if I get my frustration out on trying to get some origami finished, then maybe when I get back to the computer, I'm happier to be there and writing again because it's more my area. So take a break if you need to. That's always going to help you. Another thing that's important is to limit distractions. You want to hide your phone when you're writing. Keep it away from you so you're not seeing messages pop up. Hide from the kids if you have to. Try to give them something to do, or wait till they're asleep if you have children. It's kind of difficult to write with young children. You want to hide unnecessary tabs in your browser so you're not tempted to go and look through those so you don't get distracted. We have so many things in the modern age that are competing for our attention. So you want to be aware of those. And then also a good idea is to set a designated writing time and ask others not to disturb you. That could be on the weekend. It could be later at night, whatever time it is you can squeeze in if you're working. Just ask people not to disturb you when you're at that working time so you don't get distracted. Another thing is we sort of think that we have to begin our writing at the beginning and then finish at the end because that's how we read books. But if the chapter or section that you're working on isn't coming together the way that you'd like, move on. You don't need to be stuck on that one chapter to keep going. Books are meant to be read in order, but that doesn't mean that they're written that way. A lot of people will think of their ending first, and then they have to kind of go back and put things together. The other thing that's helpful with the AI at Scribbler is that if you decide that you're going to stop at chapter 1 and move on to, like, the next section of your book, and it's not chapter 2, you can use the summary and notes and research and list functions to help you stay on track. So you can summarize your chapters in the summary function, and then you'll know what you were working on, even if you skip forward a bit in your writing. So that'll keep you, on track to do that as well. Another thing that's helpful, and I like this, I'm part of several writing groups, both online and in person, is to talk to other people who are writers. Sometimes talking about your struggles as a writer is really going to be useful to find people in a community. You can talk to a trusted friend or confidant. If they're not writers, it may not be as helpful to you as a writing community, though. So we do have a writing community on Discord. You can talk with other writers there. And I find the most supportive advice often comes from people who are also writers. That's very, very helpful to me because we're often experiencing the same struggles. And we cheer for each other too, which is really nice. If somebody's going through writer's block and they say, hey, I wrote a chapter today, or I wrote a paragraph, it's something that we can all celebrate because we've all had that feeling of not being able to write. Another thing that's important, and this goes with the research that we saw at the beginning of this webinar, there are writers who struggle with anxiety about what they're producing, and they compare themselves to other people. Don't do that. You want to accept your imperfections because it's what makes your writing unique. And artists tend to be very difficult and hard on themselves. So remember that writing is a work in progress. It's not something that begins and ends in one day. It's something that it takes time, and then you have to go back and edit too. So the AI here, again, is going to help you in the rewrite function, because once you've gotten something on the screen, you can go and use the rewrite function when you're ready to edit. And I really like that it has different ways to have the AI rewrite for you. You can rephrase, you can ask it to expand something. So this is all very helpful. You can also have the AI create a full draft for you to review and edit. So you're playing the role of an editor. So it takes some of the pressure off of yourself, especially if you're a perfectionist. So you can pretend that you're editing someone else's work, which is really nice. Another thing that might be helpful for those of you that are visual, and I tend to do this when I get to like stuck, or if I'm beginning a project, I'd like to create mind maps. And sometimes this can be really helpful when it comes to writer's block. You might want to, set aside what you're working on and then actually physically work on something by mind mapping or organizing your thoughts. This is going to help you lay a path for what you want to write next. And it's just a good way to, get away from the standard way of like trying to type on your screen to maybe laying out what you think you want to accomplish next. And you can do this with a series of words or phrases, any way that kind of helps you move forward with your creativity. Another thing that's important is to stay positive. Try to keep a positive attitude about your writing. We tend to sometimes be so hard on ourselves, as I said earlier, but you do want to celebrate your victories. It's not easy to write a book. It's not easy to write a memoir. These are all victories that you're having. Even if you've just made a paragraph for the day, that's something to celebrate. Another thing I like about Scribbler's list function is that you can rate yourself with stars to boost your self-confidence. So maybe not every chapter that you're working on is 5-star, but celebrate the ones that are 4 to 5 stars. That's an accomplishment, and it's worth celebrating. Remember that Scribbler's AI is your co-pilot, and it's your collaborative partner, and it's always ready to work, even if you aren't. If you're having a rough day, you're tired, you can always write a few sentences and ask the auto-write feature to continue. And then you can read what it's come up with. And then you can add a little bit more, and then you can ask it to come up with more from what you've written. So this is going to be back and forth momentum, which is very helpful on those days that you really feel stuck and that it may be really tough to get things on the page or on the screen. So this is a wonderful feature as well that you can use to keep building momentum in your writing so you won't get stuck and take off days. The AI and research for those of you that are non-fiction writers, these functions with Scribbler's Ask Me Anything button is if you're stuck and you need research or guidance, this will give you some of the inspiration for what you're working on. I love this feature as well because it'll save you a lot of time. You don't have to open another browser and then get distracted. And I don't know if you all do this, but I do. Sometimes if I'm looking for information, I get kind of down this rabbit hole track of looking at one thing and I need to look up another thing. Because this is built in to the AI already, you can use the Ask Me Anything function. It'll provide more content for you to work with. I also love that it has the brainstorming option because if you're just trying to generate some ideas, this can really help you as well. Another good idea that for using the AI, you may need to change perspectives. And I've read of many, many writers who have done this. They started a book in third person, he, she, it. And then they decide that it's just not working for the way that they want to write the book. So they have to go back and revise and go to, if they want to write in first person, they want to do I, me, mine, right? What's nice is that if you're stuck like this and you feel like maybe your perspective is the problem, you can ask the guided writer in Scribbler's AI to revise what you've already done by using a different perspective. You can ask it to go from first person to third. You can ask it to change the tone. Perhaps you feel like a more objective tone is something you need to use here, or a more humorous tone. Maybe you're being a little too serious in what you're trying to write. And so Scribbler can do this for you as well. So sometimes if you approach a chapter or a scene in a different way, it's going to provide that momentum that you're looking for. And then you won't have to throw out everything you've written, just throw it out. You can change it, but you're not stuck to it as writers were in the past. Another thing that may be helpful to you if you have writer's block is to practice regularly with AI. Learning new tools takes time and consistency, but once you get familiar with the capabilities, you'll feel much more comfortable with them. And of course, if you need any help, we're always happy to help you. You can reach out to us at Squibbler on Discord. You have a community there that can help you. We have tips and tricks there as well. So that's a good place to look if you're struggling with a feature that you don't know how to work with. But the more that you practice with it, like any other new skill that you're acquiring, the easier it's going to become and the better you're equipped you are to defeat writer's block as well. So this is another technique, and I had to look up this one for myself. This is the Pomodoro, and it's a technique developed by Francesco Cirillo in the 1980s. And so for me, sometimes I just need to plant my seat in my seat, and I need to stay there. So if you're like me and your writer's block is because you get distracted and you want to do other things, the Pomodoro technique is where you work in 25-minute intervals and then take a 5-minute break between intervals. So there are timers for this online. My favorite one is tomatotimers.com. It's really cute. It's easy to use. It only has a few buttons. And what you do is set the timer how you'd like, and then you could ask it for a short break, the 5-minute break, or longer breaks. And you can also ask it to loop. I think it does a series of 5 in a row. So you'll do like an hour and 25 minutes. So this is really helpful for someone like me who really just needs someone to keep me in my seat working. So if that's what you struggle with and that's the cause of your writer's block, this may be something that works for you as well. So the most important thing is to remember that writing takes time, it takes energy, it takes patience. It's not unusual to have an off day or an off week. You can do it. You've got the tools. You've got some tips now that will help you. You've got the AI that's going to help you, complete things or rewrite things that maybe you're struggling with. And you've got that nice project manager and the goals there as well that can help you. So these are all things that you can do. And I know that unlike the ancient Greeks who had to go to the altars and ask the muses for help, we've got the tools that we need at our fingertips, which is really, really great. So in this webinar, we talked about what writer's block is, and we saw how some professional authors saw writer's block and some of their strategies. And then we learned some ways that we can use the AI in Scribbler to defeat writer's block. So thank you for joining us. Best of luck on your own writing odyssey. And I hope to see you all on the bookshelves.